So today is a really big day for Beatles fans. The Holy Grail of Beatles footage has been released. I mean, there's also the Magical Mystery Tour outtakes, and hopefully those will come to light at some point. But this is, for the time being, a really significant day in Beatles history. And the way that Peter Jackson has done it, I think, is exactly right. First of all, I'm so glad that he's given credit to Michael Lindsay Hogg, because people have been saying some uncharitable things about him, not least Ringo Starr, and I thought that was unfair. And as Peter Jackson has explained, the Let It Be film, because it had to showcase all the songs, did not really leave enough time for any narrative, and the Get Back story really has to be told in long form. It's not really one that can be cut down to a feature-length film, and that's really obvious watching it today, because on the one hand it's boring, and on the other hand it's fascinating. It might be the first boring / fascinating thing I've seen. That being said, I had my own experience of this, because I made a film called The Lost Weekend in China a few years ago, and for years I sat on the footage because I could not see how I could possibly condense it into the 45 minutes that I had in my head. And eventually I realised, oh no, this is something that just has to be long form. And I used 8 out of 10 hours that I'd shot, and this is the same with Get Back. The story here is the non-story in a way. It is about them going round in circles. It is about all the texture of reality that happens in between the music, and of course it is about the music insofar as not just the songs that ended up on the album, but all the warm-up songs, the trips down memory lane, the contemporary songs they reference, the jokey versions they do of their own songs. I'm really looking forward to seeing Lennon sing I Lost My Little Girl. And also you get things like the fast version of Two of Us, which I always thought is better than the slow version. Hey ho. So I checked out some of the reviews. Very disappointing to see The Guardian give it 3 stars, but then, it's just that curmudgeon's opinion. It's just, that's fair enough. In a way, it is 3 stars or even 2 stars if you're not into the Beatles. But if you understand the whole story, at this point in history, surely we do want a 7 or 8 hour version of this. And I think the hardcore Beatles fan wants a director's cut. You're going to want to see the 18-hour version. And I hope that there is a DVD that comes out at some point, or a Blu-ray, shall we say, that has a significant amount of outtakes, because I'd quite happily watch it. My takeouts from watching this, and well, I've only, this is sort of, I'm recording this at 4:15, and it was only released at 8 a.m. this morning. I don't do 8 a.m, so I watched it around lunchtime. And I've only watched it once so far. I will watch it again later on. It's got so many beautiful moments, and everything that's in it I would have want to have kept in it. So that tells me that there's probably more that I would like to see. Just even the stuff that is not strictly speaking part, which might have ended up on the cutting room floor, like George talking about what he watched on TV last night, but then saying that it is important because it is the genesis of I Me Mine. He watches this sci-fi thing, and then it's followed by something he finds quite tedious, but nevertheless watches, because back then there weren't like 100 TV channels like we have now. It was just 2 TV channels, I think. So he watches this thing about pomp and circumstance, and there are people doing a waltz in a ballroom, and that just gets him into a waltzy frame of mind, and he writes I'm in Mine. And most of what George sort of offers the Beatles, it doesn't really catch their attention. You know, you see that a lot in this first episode. You see George constantly pumping out ideas, and they're not really catching on. But I think they're lukewarm about I'm in Mine, but it just has enough going for it that it gets their attention. And the same for You Blue. Paul says that's a good one. So it's so nice to have them not just referencing popular culture, but the way that it's edited is very clever, so it kind of floats in the context. You know, that you'll see like the newspaper snapshot of the TV schedule, and that is really quite relevant. Actually, everything that's in it is relevant, because it's like Yoko and Linda talking. You know, we're all fascinated about Yoko Ono, and of course it would be interesting to know how Linda and Yoko responded to each other when they first met. It's one thing that's notable is that Yoko is sat next to John all the time, and Linda kind of fades into the background, but she does have a camera on her, so she kind of has that to busy herself with, which is nice. It's lovely to see Maureen Starkey. I hope we see more of her. It's great seeing people sort of drift in and out. One of the things that struck me, which I've not seen anyone comment on, is Dick James. Now, the Beatles, if I'm right about this, I think they gave away half of their song rights, John and Paul, to Dick James right at the beginning of their career, and they were stitched up basically. And I think that when you see Dick James talking to Paul, you can see his annoyance and his discomfort. He's not really engaging with Dick James. He's kind of, he's restrained, and I don't think Dick James, he either doesn't notice it or pretends not to notice it, but it's kind of an uncomfortable to watch, but fascinating. Are there any surprises? I guess, yeah. When I was a Beatles fan in the early 90s, there was very little you could find out about the Beatles really that didn't come through biographies that were half true, half speculation. I mean, I remember one of the earliest books I read was a book on Paul McCartney by Chet Flippo, and there was there was things like Shout and something by Albert Goldman, and a lot of it was crap really. They had just picked up fag ends and smoked them, and they gave this picture of the Let It Be sessions as being awful. And so did, in fairness, so did John Lennon when he spoke about it in retrospect. So perhaps so did they all. But I always thought the Let It Be sessions were very important for the treasure trove they were, in terms of being the only footage you had of them writing and working together of any significance, of having them showcase and play so many songs. They just seem to cover every song going that they ever, they're referencing songs from the Quarrymen days. They're playing stuff like Woman, and you have Paul singing John songs and John singing Paul songs, stuff that you'll never get anywhere else. And I knew all about that, so I thought, if nothing, it's really important for that. But what becomes obvious on watching the footage is how the the rhythm of humour and bonhomie and creativity between them is not forced. I thought there was forced jollity when I watched the Let It Be film, but actually there is, I think, some genuine good vibes going down there, and there was always a good documentary waiting to be made. That's the bizarre thing, that in 1970 there was this documentary that could have been made called Get Back, that could have shown this story, but it never was. And Glyn Johns tried to do that with his cut of his version of Get Back. He realized, he sort of did realize that the album was kind of more than music. It was a kind of a story of the making of an album. But I just feel with his cut, his choices were not always very inspired, or the way his running order of the songs or running order of the banter, or the way that he placed it, was not made the whole thing sound a bit tired and sloppy. And although Phil Spector made some mistakes with his production, it's very sort of schmaltzy, he actually kind of realised what Johns was doing, but did it better. Like, he takes the audition comment John makes and sticks it on the end of Get Back, and he did sort of sharpen it up a bit in some ways, only to sort of make it worse in others. I mean, the insertion of Dig It and Maggie May in Let It Be is not doesn't make it sound like the project that it was. It just makes it sound like they were scraping the barrel somewhat on that project. So this is it's very good archaeology. It's very good history. It's fantastic documentary. I would knock it down half a star for just this. It's the first 11 minutes. It's not necessary for Beatle fans, but for anyone that doesn't know the Beatles very well, okay, so they give you a bit of context. This is where the Beatles were at. So they have to kind of show you their genesis from the Quarrymen right up to the, the Get Back period. You get a kind of 11-minute mini documentary of the Beatles. And I just couldn't believe there are two mistakes in it, sort of 2.5 mistakes. First of all, it starts off by saying there are over 60 hours of footage. Now, I believe the number is 57. I mean, that's what Peter Jackson says it is. So either he keeps saying it wrong in interviews, or they got it wrong there. And that's bizarre. But more importantly, they say that Ringo joined the band, or they imply that Ringo joined the band in 1961. No, he did not. He joined it quite late in the day in 1962, when they already had they were already starting to record songs, and they practically had a record contract. So that I suppose they were simplifying things to make it, to not have to explain the whole Pete Best thing, but it was just unnecessary. And then they make it also look like Yellow Submarine, the film, was 66. But you can sort of understand that and let them get away with that. And then they mention something about tape loops, and that makes it look like it's 68. But of course that was 66. With Tomorrow Never Knows. So there's kind of some sloppy history there, which to a seasoned Beatle fan just doesn't look right. I think you can kind of forgive that because, once you get into the Beatles, you'll learn what the truth is, and it doesn't really sort of sully the picture of the Beatles that much. It's just probably a result of them having to do such a mega project in a relatively short space of time. The one good thing that's come out of this accident, or this / possible bio-warfare event called COVID-19, is the extra year they got to edit this film. Very necessary, I'm sure. And for that, I think China, because they've unwittingly performed a great service to the Beatles. And the Beatles are a massively important cultural phenomenon in this country, and America and Europe and Australasia, if not also Japan for that matter. So yeah, that's a bit ironic. Can't wait to see episode 2. Over and out.